A large ship sailed into the mist, just moving forward without direction. The depth of water the ship entered was getting shallower. The lookout saw something and strained their eyes in the fog.
Wall! There's a wall ahead!
The fog was too thick to make out. When the captain saw the wall in front of them, the adventure hit the black shadow. The captain hurriedly tried to steer the ship away, but they were already caught in a maze of rocks. Avoiding the collision was too late. The adventure hit the black shadow hard, with the risk of sinking from running aground at any moment. The wind and waves grew stronger. The ship in the rocky sea was swaying. The captain frantically operated the ship. Finally, the adventure successfully ran aground. Everyone could see the situation clearly. The black shadow they hit turned out to be an island with a mountain range resembling a dragon. However, the adventure had a big hole from running aground. The entire hull was leaning. The thick fog slowly dissipated. Carl was eager to take the crew and the boat to the island on a small boat. The boat quickly docked. The crew excitedly went ashore. What they saw was a row of neatly arranged skull heads. They were so excited that they didn't take it seriously. After passing through a broken bridge, they walked deep into the island. The scattered skulls along the way seemed to be warning them, but Carl was already too excited to listen. They entered a huge castle. Everything along the way was so eerie, and the island was very quiet. No other creatures were found, but the towering and continuous castle walls and scattered skeleton remains everywhere indicated that many people lived here, and they were not friendly people. And Dale looked at the horrifying scenes. Her heart was getting more and more frightened. Suddenly, a little girl appeared mysteriously. She slowly reached out her right hand, and Dale was very afraid and persuaded Carl to go back. Carl confidently waved his hand.
Handle this.
He took out a piece of chocolate from his pocket and slowly approached the little girl, but the little girl remained expressionless. Carl forcibly stuffed the chocolate into the girl's hand to show his gratitude. The girl bit him hard in return. Shortly after, they finally discovered the other people on the island. The natives hidden in the dark emerged one after another. A spear pierced the body of the man with glasses, scaring and Dale to tremble all over. A loud roar was heard in the distance. The sound echoed throughout the island. The natives, upon hearing the sound, swarmed towards, surrounding the entire film crew. Jack resisted to protect Dale, but was knocked out from behind. A man was pinned down on a stone platform by the natives, and was then fatally beaten with a baton. A burly man raised a baton to strike Carl. However, a gunshot sounded. The captain appeared with his crew just in time to save Carl. The captain fired several shots in a row, scaring the natives and making them flee. The film crew, shaken by the horror, had no choice but to return to the ship. But these cruel natives, how could they let them leave easily? As midnight approached, the natives began to act. The chimpanzee stretched out two fingers, rubbed Ndaro's hair, then it grabbed Ndaro, brought her up close to sniff her. It wasn't until this moment that Ndaro reacted, screaming at the top of her lungs, but the chimpanzee remained unfazed, carrying her off into the depths of the forest. It turns out Carl was attacked by the natives on the island during the day. Luckily, the captain and his crew saved them and brought them back. That same night, a nimble man, holding a long pole, expertly jumped onto the stranded ship, Venture. Despite it being his first time on board, he found the most beautiful girl on the ship, Ndaro, and secretly took her back to the island. With Venture finally freed from being stranded, cheers and joy filled the air as they prepared to sail back. But Jack discovered a necklace left behind by the natives, and realized that Ndaro had been captured by them. Drums began to sound on the island. Torches were lit in the sky. Ndaro was forcefully dragged by a group of natives to an eerie-looking old woman. Scared, Ndaro looked around at the strange faces of the natives, instantly losing color in her face out of fear. Witnessing this scene, the crew had no choice but to venture back to the island to rescue Ndaro. And Carl and his crew saw the scene where King Kong took Ndaro, originally planning to shoot a romantic action film. Carl instantly thought of changing the genre and shooting a different movie. He packed up the equipment with his crew and sailors, and headed towards the forest on the other side. Upon entering the forest, they were drawn by strange noises. An octagonal dragon suddenly charged towards them without warning, probably disturbed by their arrival. The octagonal dragon didn't seem too happy, rampaging left and right, tossing everyone around. Caught off guard, everyone was at a loss. It wasn't until they retaliated with continuous shots that the fierce beast calmed down. The monstrous creature that took Ndaro was King Kong. In his hands, she was as helpless as a baby chick, unable to do anything but scream out loud. Witnessing King Kong's gaping jaws and sharp fangs, Ndaro truly felt like she was facing death. Reaching the mountaintop, King Kong finally stopped, roaring and scanning the surroundings. Ndaro noticed the many remnants of bones on the ground, all wearing the same necklace as hers. Realizing the natives had offered her as a sacrifice to King Kong, in a fit of anger, Ndaro fiercely hit King Kong with the necklace. Startled, King Kong dropped her on the ground, seizing the chance while King Kong was momentarily stunned. Ndaro scrambled away in a hurry. Her sudden action enraged King Kong. He quickly caught her again and ran through the forest, jostling her violently. Ndaro couldn't take it anymore. In the midst of King Kong's frantic running, Ndaro fainted. Following Ndaro's screams, Carl and the others found King Kong's feeding ground, littered with bone fragments. Jack was deeply concerned for Ndaro, and hastened his pace forward. They arrived at an abandoned city gate. Jack noticed a massive footprint on the ground. Everyone was stunned and couldn't help but wonder what kind of creature could leave such a footprint, while Carl, holding the camera, unsuspectingly discovered a large herd of brontosaurus peacefully grazing on grass, unaffected by the humans' arrival. Just as everyone was still in shock and awe, the once calm brontosaurus all lifted their heads. Several figures quickly ran past them. The brontosaurus were now on edge, no longer interested in grazing. They turned and started running towards Carl. The T-Rex is chasing after humans, getting closer to Carl and Jack, almost crossing over their heads. Some of the smaller guys weren't so lucky, being crushed to a pulp by the T-Rex's massive limbs. No one knows why they, who were once peaceful, are now so frantic, until a pack of velociraptors appear behind them. It's dinner time for the velociraptors. One velociraptor jumps onto the T-Rex's neck. Luckily, the T-Rex is strong, shaking its neck and flipping the velociraptor to the ground. The big guy can't run anymore. He cleverly hides in the corner. Then he notices something strange above him, slowly lifting his head. A big head emerges. Frightened, he turns and runs. The velociraptor emerges from the rocks and gives chase. The big guy, not willing to give up, runs forward, tapping into his full potential, surpassing everyone in a moment. Finally, a velociraptor squeezes out from under the T-Rex's belly, aiming for Jack. It lunges. Jack dodges quickly. The velociraptor then targets Carl. Carl can only grit his teeth and run for his life. Seeing the danger Carl is in, Jack leaps and knocks down the velociraptor. Before he can get up, his head is smashed to pieces. A sudden sharp turn appears ahead, but the T-Rex is running too fast, unable to stop in time. They all tumble down a deep cliff. Their sheer weight even crushes the road beneath. This young man brings out all his skills, running forward clumsily, escaping just before the road collapses. Behind them, the dinosaurs have no idea what's happening ahead. They continue charging forward one after another. One velociraptor overtakes, rushing to the front. Heads of those in the front don't notice until a bullet shoots out. Although it kills one, it also hits the T-Rex's leg. The T-Rex stumbles and the big guy agilely dodges. The falling dinosaur blocks the narrow road. The others fall one by one, their massive inertia causing them to tumble and stack on top of each other, quickly blocking the path entirely. The agile velociraptor, however, manages to escape this disaster, continuing to charge towards everyone. Before they can catch their breath, they must continue climbing up to protect the precious video footage. A velociraptor bites the cameraman's leg and drags him down. They paddle on a bamboo raft, continuing their journey. Suddenly, the calm water stirs. A bizarre-looking shrimp crawls onto the shore. Noticing its ugly appearance, Jack swiftly kills it with a stick. More shrimp start crawling up. Everyone frantically uses their weapons to drive them away. Some hit with sticks, some kick with their feet. The number of shrimp increases. Just when they seem overwhelmed, the shrimp scatter and disappear. The water surface returns to unusual calmness. As they anxiously wait, their bamboo raft is nudged by something. A huge shadow appears in the water. This is a long and fast-moving creature. As everyone searches around, the shadow swiftly approaches them. The bamboo raft is suddenly overturned. The shadow flickers and disappears into the water. Frantically, they rescue their fallen comrades from the water. The creature appears again. It turns out to be a giant oarfish. It bites and swallows a person in one go, then vanishes into the water. Everyone hurriedly fires at the water, missing the oarfish but scattering the raft. Now they are all trapped in the water, struggling to crawl onto the shore. It's a race against time. An unfortunate guy is about to reach the shore, but is swiftly seized by the oarfish and dragged into the water. Eventually, they manage to escape the water area, moving towards the deepest part of the forest along a bridge. Suddenly, a cave ahead emits a swarm of bats. The captain signals everyone to stop. One person cautiously approaches the cave entrance, seeing the pitch-black abyss inside. Even the usually calm and courageous captain feels nervous.
Go back!
Without hesitation, he shoots towards the cave. No one knows what lurks inside the cave. What could make someone as brave and composed as him so frightened? Kong rudely threw the woman on the ground. Annie fell down motionless. Kong casually pawed at her a few times. Annie still lay there with her eyes closed. Kong sat beside her, gazing at the beautiful scenery. Annie quietly opened her eyes, stealthily crawled forward a few steps. She glanced back, got scared and passed out again. Seeing Annie still not moving, Kong started gnawing on sugarcane. Annie continued to crawl forward, hid behind a large rock, and ran out of the cave. Just as she emerged from the cave, she was stopped by one of Kong's feet. Annie turned to run back, but the other foot blocked her path. Kong showed a look of amusement. His huge head leaned forward. Annie sneakily crawled further, escaping behind a large rock and ran, slowly advancing towards Annie, until she stumbled and fell. Thankfully, aside from roaring a few times, Kong didn't make any further moves toward Annie. Annie slowly got up from the ground. Looking at the giant in front of her, Kong was getting annoyed, and roared loudly to break the awkward silence. Annie jumped up but then fell back down. Surprising Kong, he cautiously bent down towards Annie, but she jumped up again. With this sudden move, Kong was thoroughly puzzled. He then let out a loud roar to express his frustration. Annie had to continue performing, reaching out to play a game. Kong seemed genuinely amused. His eyes even showed a glimmer of anticipation, as if demanding another dance from her. Seeing the effectiveness of her act, Annie put more effort into her performance. Kong was captivated and engaged. Even an interaction developed between them, playing until they both had fun. Kong laughed heartily, signaling his enjoyment. Annie continued with her comedic acts. Kong enthusiastically applauded her, but soon, she became too exhausted to continue. Kong, however, seemed to still want more. He eagerly awaited further entertainment, as Annie struggled to get up.
No! I said no! That's all there is. There isn't any.
Kong's expression gradually froze. He struck the ground in front of him with a fist, letting out a roar of anger. He intended to find a bottle of alcohol, but after searching around and finding none, he furiously broke a nearby stone pillar, then began a wild outburst, destroying the surrounding flowers and grass. Once he finished venting, he pounded his chest, proudly standing in front of Annie. But as a large rolling stone hit him, he shook his dazed head, glanced back at Annie, realized he had failed to pretend adequately, quietly disappeared from her sight. Annie was stunned for a moment before realizing she couldn't miss this opportunity. However, she soon got lost in the jungle, not knowing which way to go. A woman runs into a dinosaur that is eating. The dinosaur is enjoying its meal. Annie carefully steps back and hides behind a big tree, but as she turns around, she runs into another dinosaur face to face. After a few seconds of shock, she turns and runs. The dinosaur roars and chases after her. Annie dives into a big tree trunk. The dinosaur is not planning to let her go easily. It slowly approaches Annie step by step. Just as it is about to reach her, the dinosaur suddenly widens its eyes, lets out a cry of pain, and gets pulled away. Another dinosaur also sneaks away. Annie doesn't quite understand what just happened. A large centipede silently approaches. Annie is frozen with fear, and can only stare in despair as it gets closer. The tentacles slowly stretch out to her face. Annie widens her eyes in desperation. Another centipede crawls up. Only then does Annie realize what is happening. She frantically swats the centipede's off her, and scrambles out of the tree hollow. As she hurries to swat at her body, she hears a noise from behind. Slowly turning her head, she sees a Tyrannosaurus Rex carrying the dinosaur that attacked her earlier, curiously eyeing her. Annie doesn't say anything and just runs. The T-Rex, with its food in its mouth, starts chasing her. Seeing that its meal is not enough, the T-Rex catches up to Annie in 3 quick steps. After narrowly avoiding a strike from the T-Rex, Annie continues running along the cliff edge. She looks into the sparkling eyes of the T-Rex, her heart filled with despair. She grits her teeth and keeps running. But one misstep causes her to slip and slide down the steep slope. The T-Rex temporarily loses sight of her. Annie seizes the opportunity to escape and hides in a hollow on a tree branch, hoping to evade the T-Rex's pursuit. The T-Rex searches around and slowly moves away, without noticing Annie hiding nearby. Annie dares not even breathe. The T-Rex searches for a while and finally leaves. She finally breathes a sigh of relief, but just as she is about to relax, another big head slowly extends towards her, unaware of the danger beside her. She is still on high alert for the departing T-Rex, when she finally notices the anomaly around her. The T-Rex opens its mouth wide and lunges at her. Thankfully, the tree branches provide some protection. After several failed attempts, the enraged T-Rex breaks a branch. Annie screams and falls down, but she manages to grab onto a branch, leaving her completely exposed in front of the T-Rex. It's time for the T-Rex to feed. Tyrannosaurus Rex was ready to eat the beautiful woman in front of him. At that moment, King Kong flew in from afar. He grabbed a tree branch and kicked the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the side. The Tyrannosaurus Rex fell to the ground. Annie also fell down. King Kong quickly caught her in his hand. Dodging the Tyrannosaurus Rex's deadly strike, he reached for its neck and threw it away. King Kong grabbed Annie with one hand and the Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck with the other. Just as the Tyrannosaurus Rex was about to eat its last meal, it charged towards Annie and King Kong's hand, focused on the battle. King Kong didn't notice the danger. He moved towards Annie step by step. Annie screamed in terror. Hearing the sound, King Kong finally noticed another enemy. As the Tyrannosaurus Rex was about to bite Annie, King Kong pulled back his arm in pain after being bitten. At the same time, he got a solid bite himself. He gritted his teeth and swung his arm to fling both Tyrannosaurus Rexes away. Seeing that he was about to face 2 powerful enemies at once, he had to seriously deal with the battle. King Kong slowly retreated. The 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes advanced towards him, one on each side. King Kong felt the pressure. He analyzed the situation on the field as he stepped back. Just then, a third Tyrannosaurus Rex attacked from behind. The other 2 also took the opportunity to charge at him. King Kong struck quickly, with only 2 punches. He sent the charging 2 dinosaurs flying. He grabbed Annie's hand and locked one Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck with his hand while pressing the other's mouth with his foot. He then squeezed the neck of the third Tyrannosaurus Rex. The entire set of actions flowed smoothly and cleanly. Using his body to press one dinosaur down, he grabbed the mouth of another Tyrannosaurus Rex and flung it aside effortlessly. This Tyrannosaurus Rex was still fixated on Annie and determined to eat her. With one arm raised, King Kong smashed it towards the other one. With a swift turn, he flung the other one away with a punch, single-handedly lifting a large rock. He crushed one Tyrannosaurus Rex's head. The remaining Tyrannosaurus Rex seized the opportunity to bite King Kong's arm, gritting his teeth in pain. King Kong rolled and threw it down. Annie was accidentally flung out in the chaos. In a panic, King Kong surprisingly caught her with his foot while protecting Annie's safety. He also had to deal with the 2 remaining dinosaurs, biting the shoulder of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. He grabbed it and slammed it against a tree. King Kong and the 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes continued to brawl as they rolled towards the cliff. In the chaos, King Kong was bitten again. He was on the verge of rolling towards the cliff. Grabbing one Tyrannosaurus Rex, he flung it off the cliff. He grabbed the edge of the cliff as the Tyrannosaurus Rex tumbled down. King Kong reached out his arms and grabbed the leg of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, wanting to pull it into the cliff as well. The Tyrannosaurus Rex bit down on King Kong's leg as they rolled around. The intense pain made King Kong tense up. The Tyrannosaurus Rex held on tight, not letting go. The immense weight forced King Kong to let go of the cliff he was holding onto. They both fell off the cliff together, and also flew out of King Kong's grasp. Luckily, she was caught by a dense vine and did not fall down. As King Kong and the Tyrannosaurus Rex continued to fall, they were caught by the vines and rocks, but their fight still continued. The Tyrannosaurus Rex now could only endure the blows and did not have the strength to fight back. The other Tyrannosaurus Rex that fell down earlier landed not far from Anne. Seeing and swinging back and forth not far away, the Tyrannosaurus Rex became extremely excited. It used its hind legs to swing towards Anne's direction, and they swung back and forth like two swings several times, and was almost bitten by it. Seeing this, King Kong, who was fighting the Tyrannosaurus Rex below, immediately stopped and threw down the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Then he climbed up the vines and rocks. Just as the Tyrannosaurus Rex was about to bite Anne, King Kong jumped up and grabbed its tail and pulled it down. The juicy meat that was about to reach the Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth flew away. The tremendous weight made them fall down again and slipped down too, but she managed to grab onto the Tyrannosaurus Rex's teeth and did not fall down. However, she happened to fall on the head of the other Tyrannosaurus Rex below. The situation became dangerous again. King Kong turned and kicked the Tyrannosaurus Rex that was about to bite Anne, and finally fell down as well, and landed on the Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth. Just a moment's carelessness, and she would be swallowed whole. King Kong hurried to save Anne, but was bitten by the Tyrannosaurus Rex he was fighting with, and also fell down together with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and got up and ran, with the Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing closely behind. Just as it was getting closer to Anne, about to swallow her whole, King Kong finally descended from above, and the fight between two groups of three turned into a one-on-one duel. Both sides prepared for the final battle, and quietly hid behind King Kong, who now had no worries. The Tyrannosaurus Rex roared and charged. King Kong lowered his chest and met it head-on. He charged up and accurately grabbed hold of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth, trying to tear it apart. The Tyrannosaurus Rex fought back desperately, rolling its body in an attempt to shake him off. King Kong rode on its back, only wanting to tear apart its mouth. He tried time and time again, as the Tyrannosaurus Rex struggled, gradually losing the strength to resist. King Kong seized the moment and firmly held the Tyrannosaurus Rex's jaws with both hands. He exerted force, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex stopped struggling. After everything was done, King Kong stepped on the Tyrannosaurus Rex's body, stood upright, and bellowed in victory, and watched all of this in astonishment. King Kong stood calmly in front of Anne, gazing proudly ahead. He turned back to look at Anne, slowly walked forward. King Kong picked up Anne and placed her on his shoulder, taking big strides forward. Kong rushed out of the cave. Before the first mate could pull out his gun, he grabbed him in his hand. Facing the man in front of him, Kong had no patience left. He stared fiercely at the man in his hand, his eyes gradually becoming sharper. Just as the first mate made a move, Kong threw him towards the cliff. The others quickly opened fire on Kong. Angry, Kong charged towards them. He lifted up the bridge made of trees. One person who couldn't stand steady fell off. Below was a deep valley. Falling down there would be almost certain death. And Kong, unable to find Anne, vent his fury on the men before him. Against absolute power, they had no room for resistance, only clinging tightly to the tree trunks. The rest depended on luck. Those unable to hold on and with bad luck had already fallen. Kong continued to play with the branches like toys, ignoring the screams of the men. Finally, Kong pushed the big tree off the cliff. The tree tumbled down and got stuck not far from the ground. The remaining men barely escaped with their lives. Jack got up and threw a burning stick. Several startled bugs quickly scurried away. Strange creatures emerged from the swamp waters. The large bugs moved swiftly and landed on Jack. He was surrounded by several large bugs. Carl also snapped out of his sorrow and picked up his weapon, charging towards the bugs. After days of hard work filming, all was lost. The bugs gathered around Jack were finally killed, and he was unharmed. Carl, on the other hand, was surrounded by the bugs. After they finally eliminated all the large bugs, a group of scorpions surrounded them, with a more terrifying shape and size than the bugs, and they were energetic and eager after their recent movement. The three completely lost the will to resist, as scorpions continued to approach from afar. At this critical moment, the captain and his crew arrived. They shot at the scorpions climbing down. Their bodies fell to the bottom of the cliff. The scorpions couldn't withstand the bullets, and they were quickly eliminated. The rescue team reached the bottom of the valley. Jack and Carl were finally saved. The others, who had experienced life and death, had given up searching for Anne. Only Jack believed in the power of true love, planning to rescue Anne from Kong's grip alone. And Carl, whose dreams of a great film had been shattered, suddenly had a bold idea: to capture Kong and sell him for money. He persuaded the captain to help him complete this daunting task. King Kong took him back to his home. He went straight to the edge of the balcony and sat down slowly and walked slowly to King Kong. But he didn't even look at her, just like a sulky boyfriend, and smiled mischievously and leaned forward to look at him. But the Skull Island monster just ignored her and thought about how to cheer up this big guy. She picked up a small stone and performed a juggling act in front of him. King Kong glanced casually at Anne. She turned to see his reaction, but his gaze was fixed on the distance and tried to make him smile by showing off her skills. But King Kong still remained unresponsive and followed his gaze to the distance,
It's beautiful.
only to realize that the sun was setting. The sunset bathed the whole world in golden light. Anne and King Kong both took on a golden glow and looked at King Kong with tender eyes. And finally, his heart melted under her gaze. He reached out a huge hand. Anne and sat on it. The two of them sat side by side, hand in hand, watching the sunset, until and fell asleep in his arms. He gently stroked her body, afraid to wake her up with any sudden movements, though he was also exhausted. Jack finally found King Kong's home, careful not to disturb the bats sleeping in the cave. He tiptoed past them, and climbed up to King Kong's balcony along the steep cliff. He finally saw the sleeping King Kong, approaching quietly. He saw Anne sleeping in King Kong's arms, and opened her eyes in disbelief at what she saw. Looking at the man who deeply loved her, she hesitated and reached out her hand to Jack. Seeing their hands slowly intertwining, King Kong opened his eyes, and was enraged by the scene before him. Enraged that this man was trying to take his woman while he slept. The Skull Island monster was not one to be trifled with. His roar woke the sleeping bat colony. The bats scattered, hindering King Kong's movement. Enraged even more, he vowed to deal with this man. He directed his anger at the bats. The bats, smelling blood, became even more frantic, and threw themselves at King Kong. Taking advantage of the chaos, Jack approached Anne, held her tightly.
Anne, it's okay. Anne, let's go.
And then grabbed Anne's hand and fled. King Kong was busy fighting off the bats, and as they were about to make their final exit, Anne hesitated, but finally crawled onto Jack's back, and slowly climbed down the vines. King Kong finally dispersed the bats, grabbed the vines and pulled the two back up. Just as they were about to be pulled up to the cliff's edge, a large bat attacked Jack and Anne. Luckily, Jack was quick-witted, grabbing onto the bat's wing. The startled bat flew away with them. Even with all his strength, Kong could only roar in the direction they left. The bat flew them into the river. The two emerged and ran towards the sea, quickly arriving at the city wall where Anne was taken. Carl heard Jack's call for help, and was ready to capture Kong. Carl gave the order, and the drawbridge was lowered. They quickly ran across. Kong leapt onto the city wall, bursting through the gate. They threw hooks towards Kong, the hooks firmly embedded in Kong's body. They all grabbed the ropes and pulled back with all their might. The captain threw a bottle of tranquilizer towards Kong. The shattered bottle released the tranquilizer. Kong immediately felt nauseous and dizzy. The captain ordered for a large net to be lowered from the wall. The net accurately trapped Kong, pinning him down on the ground. They all pulled on the ropes together, as the captain was about to throw the tranquilizer, and rushed up and grabbed him tightly. Jack forcibly dragged Anne away. The captain aimed at Kong and threw the bottle. The bottle landed right in front of Kong and burst open, and was also dragged away by Jack. Kong, getting weaker, watched Anne's retreating figure. Suddenly, with an immense strength from somewhere, roaring in anger, he struggled to break free, sending them soaring into the sky with a single move. He easily broke free from his restraints, charging towards the cliff where Anne left. With a single step, he effortlessly leapt over the gorge. Jack pulled Anne towards the beach, and kept looking back at Kong. The two people who fired at him were killed with a swipe of his hand. They arrived at the shore and quickly boarded a small boat, and tried to go back to save Kong but was stopped by the others. Finally, the boat left the shore. Kong's steps were staggered, getting closer and closer to the sea. One person tried to shoot Kong to stop him, but was angrily grabbed, bitten, and thrown aside by Kong. He jumped into the sea. The tranquilizer slowly took effect. Carl picked up a tranquilizer bottle, preparing to throw it. Kong smashed the small boat with a punch. Carl flew into the water. Kong picked up the boat and threw it towards the cliff. The boat instantly shattered. Kong walked step by step towards Anne's boat. The captain shot a harpoon. The harpoon pierced Kong's thigh. Kong screamed in pain, which broke Anne's heart on the boat. Kong continued to crawl forward, relentless, unafraid even in the face of the harpoon on the boat. His eyes only on Anne at this moment. The captain threw a tranquilizer bottle at Kong, who was focused solely on Anne. The tranquilizer quickly took effect. Kong was becoming more and more drowsy. Staggering, he knelt down, his strength slowly dissipating. Anne's eyes were now brimming with tears. Kong mustered all his remaining strength and lifted his head, reaching out his hands slowly towards Anne, and couldn't hold back her tears any longer. Kong gazed at Anne with a very sad expression on his face. As the tranquilizer fully kicked in, he slowly closed his eyes, and weakly fell to the ground. The curtain rises, revealing the towering figure of Kong. The audience erupts in thunderous applause. Carl commands his men to pull the lever. The iron chains creak and groan, as Kong's hands are slowly raised. He has always been obedient to Carl, until he hears the name Anne. Amidst the applause of the crowd, Anne's hands are bound and lifted to the center of the stage. Kong, once quiet, becomes agitated. He thrashes his body in excitement, looking at the woman before him, head bowed and silent, his eyes filled with worry and concern. He leans forward, and slowly lifts her head. But Kong's expression turns to confusion. The woman is not Anne, but an imposter, arranged by Carl for the performance. Kong roars in anger, realizing this is all a show. His emotions grow more intense, the flashing lights irritating his eyes, increasing his unease and rage. Watching the false and scream, Kong's struggles become more violent, his emotions more volatile. The audience continues to applaud. Kong finally breaks free from one handcuff. The audience grows tense. He lets out a roar. The audience scrambles to escape. The scene becomes chaotic. Kong grabs the imposter Anne and tosses her aside. The audience panics, fleeing in all directions. Kong breaks free from the other handcuff. He leaps and charges towards the exit, pummeling anyone in his path. The crowd abandons their elegant demeanor. Jack stands before Kong, unafraid. Kong glares at him menacingly. Before charging towards him, Jack leaps onto a nearby balcony. The sheer weight causes the balcony to collapse. Kong climbs the wreckage. Jack runs in fear. Kong swiftly ascends to the balcony, just about to grab Jack. Jack retreats into the stairway, narrowly escaping. Kong smashes through a window and onto the street. Cars collide with him, creating chaos on the streets. The crowd screams. Kong becomes even more agitated, spinning and destroying more cars. Suddenly, he spots a blonde girl in the crowd. Grabbing her, He inspects her closely, realizing she is not his beloved Anne. He tosses her aside, continuing his search through the chaos, desperately seeking the woman in his heart. King Kong is pounding a public bus. There are many people inside the bus. They are about to fall victim to King Kong's wrath. Jack drives up to King Kong, immediately capturing his attention. King Kong slowly sets down the bus in his hand and charges towards Jack. Jack quickly drives in reverse, trying to escape. King Kong chases after him. Jack leads him through bustling streets, through narrow alleyways, hoping to lure him to a less populated area to prevent further innocent people from getting hurt. Finally, King Kong catches up to him and smashes his car with a single punch. Jack also passes out. Suddenly, King Kong's movements stop. He looks towards the quiet street. A figure slowly emerges, her beautiful figure resembling that of Anne's. As she approaches, King Kong finally sees clearly. Indeed, it is Anne, the one he has been thinking about day and night. The distance between the two decreases until both of them come to a stop. Anne looks at him, and he looks at Anne. Time freezes in that moment, and reaches out and touches his body. Gently, King Kong cradles her in his hand and then caresses his face. Her movements are so gentle, her expression so happy. King Kong carries Anne along the street, both of them making their way to the park's lake. The ice surface is slippery, and King Kong nearly falls. As he tries to get up, he slips again and laughs. Watching this clumsy giant, King Kong eventually sits on the ice and spins with and on the surface and laughs even more joyfully. This is her first laughter since returning from Skull Island. They keep spinning on the ice, like a dance between two people. King Kong becomes happier the more they play, both of them immersed in this beautiful moment, completely forgetting everything around them, hoping that this beauty can last forever. However, a bomb falls on the ice, sending King Kong flying. He struggles to crawl forward, taking in and running to the street. Bullets behind them continue to fire. King Kong smashes a car with a single kick, climbs up the building's metal framework to the roof, jumps to the opposite rooftop. The bullets below keep shooting upward. King Kong skillfully dodges them all. He guides in through the rooftops, running towards the Empire State Building. He climbs up the building's exterior wall, holding it tightly in his hand. Soon, they reach the top of the Empire State Building. He sits there, thinking no one will disturb them here. He looks at the serenity in his hand, watching the sun about to rise in the distance. It feels like they are back to that beautiful evening on Skull Island, and speaks the same words she did that evening. Just as the two are immersed in the blissful memory, the roar of fighter jets interrupts them.